Howdy, folks. I'm Nim Jickles. This is the Ain't That a Bitch podcast, episode 32. Back on my own. This recording has taken a while to get around to. Really falling off the schedule. I don't really have an excuse for that. Did I say this? Did I say that on the podcast before? I had this thing. No, I don't think I have. But I don't remember what it was. I watched it in a show somewhere, and I saw it in a show where some guy showed up late for class, or was it late for work? Late for work or something? I don't know. And he just walked in, told his boss or his teacher or whatever, and he's just like, sorry I'm late, no excuse. And then just went on about his day. And I was like, holy hell, that's what I should have been saying all this time. It's amazing. I love it. Because, don't you get that? Don't you get that? Every time you're late for something, be it your teacher, your parents, they're going to ask you why you're late. And then as soon as you start to tell them, they're going to tell you no excuses. It's the worst. It's the worst one ever. Some things I get. Sometimes I get it. It really is on us. There's I've started to catch myself. I've started to try and be more conscientious about that kind of thing where I, forget something. And it's like, oh, well, maybe sometimes I had a thing. Okay, well, this just happened just recently was, I had jazz. We started, by the way, we're playing instruments in jazz band, in band now, which is nice. I was going to say it's great, but if everyone catches COVID, it's not going to be great, but, we don't know that yet. But we're playing our instruments. We're able to play our instruments, and at the very least, that's been fun, and band has had meaning again. And so jazz band has also started. We're playing that. Very exciting. Very excited to play the new music. And so we've had rehearsals. We've had 2 rehearsals so far, and they're 2 official ones. The first 2 are like preparatory, whatever, sorting it out, who's in the band, who's get your music, what day is it going to be on, right? And so those were on, I want to say Thursday. I think Thursday was kind of the de facto jazz band day, and they're like, okay, well, it seems like a lot of people are busy on Thursday, which I wasn't, so we're going to make it Tuesday, and I was actually busy on Tuesdays, the one day of the week I couldn't stay after school. Whatever, that's how it works. I rearranged things so that the scheduling worked out. So jazz rehearsals were on Tuesdays after school, and like I said, we've only had 2 rehearsals of that so far. So not a lot of time to settle into that schedule. And I forget things regularly, even if it's something that's been, like, I'll forget something that I've had all year, like, I don't know, my age. I'll forget my age. Once I'm 8 months into being whatever it is, I forget how to spell my brother's name or whatever. Anyways, so it's not weird that I would forget that. But so what happened last time, and again, this was just the second time we had this rehearsal, was we had Thanksgiving break. It was a 4-day weekend. So Friday was off of the previous week, and then Monday was off of this week that I'm in when I'm recording this. So we started school on Tuesday, which is the jazz rehearsal day, and my brain knew it was Tuesday, but it was in Monday mode. I was in Monday mode thinking, okay, so jazz band is tomorrow, which it wasn't. It was today. So it wasn't until actually before I went to school I remembered, I got jazz band today. And then halfway through the school day I was like, I have jazz band today. I had forgotten it and then remembered it over the course of the school day. No big deal. I remembered it. So I remembered it halfway through class. Then classes ended, I went outside ready to go home, and then remembered I had jazz band again. So I remembered it like at least 3 times throughout the day. So I almost forgot it right at the last second. But I went back in and went to the band room. All's good and well, but I had to send my dad a text being like, hey, got jazz band today. Don't come pick me up. And I sent that, of course, after school's already over. So with the planning of trying to arrive as school ends, he was already here. Which I can understand is pretty annoying. So, but here was the thing. So he sent me, he responded, he was just like, jazz band today, you need to know about this sooner. And I was like, look, all right, yeah, that's true. But, it was because it's a weird week. It's been off. And I was like, okay, well, that's not really a fair excuse. Because I did know at the start of the day before I left home. So I had all that time I could have told him. then I realized, wait a second, jazz rehearsal today is not weird because, again, my brain was still in Monday mode. So in my mind, for some reason, I was thinking, because this week is weird, it's a 3-day week because we had Monday off, right? But then we also have Thursday off, which is when I'm recording this because of parent-teacher interviews. So because the week has been so weird, my brain had just assumed that the jazz rehearsal day was a day off, and so it had to get moved to a different day or something like that. Which it wasn't, because Tuesday was one of the days that we do have school, so nothing had to be changed about the jazz rehearsal. A lot of other band rehearsals did have to get moved around because there's instrumental music for junior and senior. There's band for junior and senior. But jazz got to stay the same. But my brain was thinking, everything got moved around. So in my mind, the jazz being on Tuesday was a new thing. And I was like, all right, I guess I should have told my dad, I should have filled him in. That's on me. Then I was like, holy shit, it's always on Tuesday. And so then I felt, this is all taking place over the course of the jazz rehearsal where I'm like going through all the back and forth with this. And then I just come to that realization, I'm like, what the fuck? I was totally in the clear because it's always on Tuesday. That's the regular day for it. So I shouldn't have to remind it. Because what am I going to have to say every single week? Hey, jazz today. And now in all fairness, like I said, it was only the second rehearsal, and it was a weird week. So there's a lot of reasons why you might have forgotten that it was on Tuesday. Hell, I forgot that it was on Tuesday. Even if I remembered that we had jazz rehearsal, I forgot that was the normal day for it. So really, it's not fair. It is an excuse to be like, but it was a weird week, and that's the normal time anyways. But like, I even forgot that, so that is an excuse. And in those cases, that's something where, when they say, no excuses, that's kind of fair. So I started to try and just shut my trap in situations like that, and I didn't say anything. That said, in where I am, I feel defensible is that, like, I don't think that it's my responsibility to remind my dad that I have the rehearsal when he may not know. He may not know it. That's understandable, right? But this in particular has been a bit of a big deal because I had to move my theory lessons, which were the thing on Tuesday after school. I talked to the family about this. I had to move those, arrange with my teacher to move those to Thursday because Tuesdays were taken for jazz. So they all knew that was a thing. And then I put up a band calendar, just put it up the day before, on the refrigerator. So, in half a second, anyone could go take a glance at that and be like, oh, what's that? Jazz rehearsal, and it's on the Tuesday. So, yeah, I forgot, that's on me, and he forgot, that's on him. So, at a base level, that cancels out. He forgot about jazz, I forgot about jazz. It's nobody's fault because we both just individually forgot. So, I'm not saying it's his fault. I never said that. I'm just saying I don't think it's my responsibility to remind him because then you're shifting it's like the blame towards me, and I don't want to play the blame game here, but what the hell? I that's in real life. I don't want to play the blame game. On the podcast, I'm perfectly susceptible to blame gaming. But so it's pushing the blame onto me where it's like I just want it to be in a neutral position, right between myself and my dad, but he's anyways, so I don't feel like that burden's on me to remind you of something when it's the regular date that it is, and there's been at least 2 reminders of it throughout the weekend, even if I myself forgot the thing. Right? That seems fair to me. Anyways, so I've started to try and catch myself with excuses and not give excuses and just give reasons. And if I don't have a reason, I don't say anything, right? Or whatever. Or I try to give a good reason instead of the simple excuse. But when it's you being late, there's a point. I feel like there are excuses for being late. So again, I catch myself with, the bus scheduling is bad, right? Which it is. And I'm gonna get to that in a second. But whenever I have to take the bus, I'm often late. I feel really bad about this because it's the same teacher. I don't know that it's just a coincidence, but last year it was the same exact thing. Where for some reason the class I was most often late to was last year's science, or Chem 20. It was Chemistry 20. And because it was the first class of the day, because we have a switch thing, right, where we have a first, second, third, and fourth period, but then every other day it's 1 and 2 switch places, 3 and 4 switch places. So on Monday it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. Tuesday it'll be 2, 1, 4, 3, and then switch back again. And for some reason, the days when I was late was always not just a single day out of the week. It would be the 2 days out of the week where chemistry was the first class of the day. So, for him, it was just like, this guy just can't show up to school on time. And it's like, no, I just can't show up to your class on time, and I don't know why that is. And now this year, I have biology with the exact same teacher, and the same thing has been happening. I feel awful about it because he just thinks that it's unlikely, but if he remembers that from last year, he's like, this guy, man, can't show up on time to save his life. And it's like, you're right. But yeah, I don't make the excuse because I know it is an excuse, but I often want to just be like, it's because the bus scheduling is terrible, because the first bus that comes that would let me be on time would also have me be, at least 20 minutes early or something. And then the bus after that has me be 5-10 minutes late. So I either have to be early or late. And it's like, that's an excuse, because just be early, suck it up. And I don't have a problem with being early. So that's to me what qualifies as an excuse, where if it's not actually a problem until someone's asking you to explain yourself, then you're like, well, this is not opportunity to be a problem, which is a great way to write an essay or win a debate. Not like the presidential debate, like an actual debate with rules and things. It's a great way to win your argument, but not good for an explanation in regular day-to-day life, right? Again, this is what teachers, especially with like a boss or something. But so yeah, when I'm late and I don't have a good excuse, I have an excuse, but it's not a good one, I'm just going to start saying that. I'm just going to start saying no excuse and then be done with it. Because like at a glance, that might sound worse, where it's just like, oh, you have no excuse. But again, every time you try to give yourself an actually good explanation, adults will almost always just be like, that's an excuse. What did you ask for? Clearly, the only answer they'll accept is like, I was in a wreck, I had a dentist appointment or something, which, yeah, that happens, but sometimes you're going to oversleep. Yeah, that's an excuse, but also you can't go into the past and not oversleep. So you say, I overslept, next time I won't do it. That's a valid explanation. If you say, if you say I woke up and was like hanging around in my house and I was like, I should probably go now 5 minutes before I was supposed to go, and then I didn't, then that's a poor excuse. But yeah, if it's just like I made a mistake, you can't go back and fix the mistake. Just try not to do it the next time. But they'll still call that an excuse because it's just, I don't know, more convenient for adults. So I'm just going to stop saying anything. I'm just going to start saying no excuse. I love that. I don't know. I don't know if that means anything to anyone else, if that gives anyone else that same feeling. I don't know that it does so far to the people I've asked about it. But to me, that's a really nice, elegant response. That's just, again, you might think that an adult would be like, oh, but you better have an explanation. But I feel like we're past that, When you're a little kid, you come running in the house covered in mud or something, your parents are like, what'd you get up to? And you don't say anything, they're gonna, hunt you down for an answer. But, when you're older and it's just something like coming in late, okay, if you're coming home late, your parents are probably going to want a reason. But yeah, if it's something like showing up for class late and you don't have a good reason, I think if you just say no excuse, they'll have to accept it, right? And if they don't, I don't know. It's like answering a question in class. Sometimes you can just say, I don't know. It's not the end of the world. You're not being graded on that, unless you are, in which case. So that was something. How did I get to that point? Whatever. It's episode 32. I'm recording this over time. Oh yeah, I was talking about excuses for why I'm recording so late. So yeah, I don't know why I always have to start the show with a meta segment, but here it is. We've been, so far this weekly podcast has been turning into a bi-weekly, or I guess, yeah, bi-weekly. Someone once said, criticized me because I used bi-monthly, I think, to mean every other month instead of twice a month, which normally would mean twice a month, right? Or in this case, bi-weekly would mean twice a week. But I looked it up, and I think it's both, which is really annoying. Don't get me wrong. There should be a difference there. The difference should just be like deci versus deca, right? Deci means divided by 10. Deca means 10 of. Centa is 100th. Centi is 100th. Centa is 100? Am I right about that? I know milli. Well, milli is 1,000, but when we do it in something like distance, millimeters is 1,000th of a meter, and then kilometers or kilometers is 1,000 meters. So I don't know if kilo and milli have different uses. Obviously, I'm talking about like if you go back to the original. Is it Greek or Latin? Damn, I don't know that. Maybe one's Greek, one's Latin. Well, this is your job, dude. I think it's Latin, but maybe one of them's Greek. Maybe that's how it works. Not sure. Anyways, so for me that would be buy and die, right? Wouldn't that make sense? Maybe I think that is how it works. Because divide, right? So die divided by 2. So die weekly should mean twice a week, and bi-weekly should mean every 2 weeks. That would make sense. Same with month. But I don't think people do that. I'm pretty sure people normally do by month. So maybe that's the mistake. Maybe that's like one of those cultural, anachronisms that we just accept now because it's been worked into culture. It's been worked into the language. It's modern English. Because again, these are borrowed terms from Latin or Greek or whatever it is. So maybe to start with, die should have been used for splitting something by 2. But, people, the biggest thing would be like magazine companies, right? They release a magazine if twice a month. If they call that bi-monthly, then that's just what it is. Or, it would be every 2 weeks. And if they call that bi-monthly, then that's what people would just come to understand bi-monthly meaning. I don't know. Maybe that's just my take on it. I don't understand. I know this English shit probably bores the hell out of anyone, but I just it's really interesting to me. So fuck off, fuck you. I don't give a shit. So yeah, this has been the podcast has been coming out every other week for like the last at least 2 episodes. So I should probably stop putting blatant lies on the at the bottom of every episode. I like how that's every episode, at the bottom it says new episodes every Sunday, whereas probably if you went through it, about half of our episodes have come out on the Sunday before another episode or the Sunday after another episode, because they're almost always, so many of them either come out a day late or just an entire week late. And then below that it's got like uncut, uncensored, and it's like whereas we cut and censor a lot very often, but we don't cut content. That's the important thing. We don't cut content. We just cut like dead silences, and I think that's fair. No one wants to watch an episode of this. I'll just leave it at that. So something to get into today. Google. As we've said, Google.
Look at this. What is this?
What's up?
Gmail logo looks
like shit. Dude, Google has updated all their logos and crap.
They all suck. They're terrible.
Weird. I thought it was. I saw Drive today. I didn't know. So they've done a lot of them.
Look at the original Gmail. Beautiful.
Yeah. Wait. What is the deal? Google's like turning into a little kid's playpen or something. What do you think you are? The McDonald's place? What? Outrageous. Okay. You should be seeing a picture of it on screen right now, or you can just open a tab and go to your Google. Like if you don't have Google accessories available to you. Fair enough. But man, they got real colorful, and it's pretty ugly. It's an eyesore.
The Google Drive one is just so stupid, man.
The Google Drive makes no sense. So it's traditionally the yellow line. It's a triangle made out of a yellow line, a blue line, and a green line, right? And now they've added colors in the corners at the intersections, right? So where the green line meets the yellow line, it's, I guess, supposed to be yellow-green, but it looks turquoise, doesn't it?
Green, man.
It's just darker green. Yellow somehow makes things darker in this world. Where yellow and blue meet, my favorite one, is it turns red.
It looks so out of place.
I guess they just wanted to incorporate the red, which is a Google color. It makes no sense. No. I don't want a square for Drive. I'm so used to the triangle.
This looks so stupid.
The colors are... Well, then just don't change it at all. Then where blue and green meets is, I guess, blue-green. It's more dark blue. It's not right. The colors don't make any sense. It's bizarre.
Yeah, I have to put a picture up because it's just upsetting.
Oh, well, anyways, that's big news, I guess.
Yep. Gmail almost looks weird.
This is what we cover, Gmail is bad. Because Gmail used to not. Now it's all. It's also all the colors.
Gmail one.
Someone just came in from corporate and was like, Google needs to have every one of their colors somewhere in all of their logos. The old one was just a mail. It was just a mail. It was clever. It was clever because it was an M on an envelope.
It was.
It's like YouTube and the save button and things where YouTube used to, remember when YouTube for some reason was just a picture of their logo was just a picture of an antenna TV.
Yeah. I can't believe we were there for that.
The only thing that survived somehow is the save button. I guess just because it would be so disorienting for the save button to be anything else. Because think about how hieroglyphic we are as a society. Technology is so hieroglyphic. Memes are also incredibly hieroglyphic, where you just don't need the captions for any of the more well-known ones. But also just technology in general, where because a lot of these programs that you got to use on a daily basis, a document program, Google Docs, Microsoft Word, a Sheets thing for Excel or Google Sheets, video editing, the editing software I use, audio editing like Audacity, video editing like Premiere Pro, all that shit. There's like almost universally a tiny little action bar at the top of functions or whatever. See, I don't know, or like Photoshop. I don't know any of these things, right? I don't know how to use any of these tools, so I don't know the right words for them. But I know enough that, so much of it is just a little symbol. Photoshop is really the one I should have led with. Photoshop is the big one where, because the video editing actually does give you some words. But photo editing and just document creation, it's just pictures. They refuse to give you any words because it'll just take up too much space, right, and get messy. So if you don't know what those images mean, so that's why the save button has been forever a floppy disk, even though floppy disks are not used at all anymore for saving things or for any reason. But that's still the universal image, even for something, as ironic as it is, something like Google Docs, where there's no physical thing even involved in that process. It's not even USB anymore. It's just itself. It's the cloud, obviously. It's the cloud where those things are saved, or the drive, if you will. But we still use that floppy disk, because can you imagine not knowing where the save button was, having to figure that out, what it looked like? That'd just be a pain in the ass. So it makes sense. But that has survived, whereas logos have not. Logos have been updated. People need to stop updating logos. They're getting them. They're all looking so fucking hipster, and it's just trash. It's really trashy looking to me. I don't know. It looks. What's the word? For cheap? Cheap
cringe.
shit. No, we need to move away from that language. There is real existing English to describe these sorts of things. It's not a mood. It's not chaotic energy. Okay, it's not sus. It's tacky. That's the word, tacky. Where's that word? That word needs to show up more, because there's a lot of shit in this world that's tacky.
I want to make a post on r/.
Yeah, I don't want to hear it.
Tacky,
r/tacky.
Tacky.
I'm certain that's the subreddit. Isn't it?
Yay.
So, other things happening, U.S. presidential debate, vice presidential debate, who cares, man? I mean, Mike Pence, we got a meme out of it, great. Mike Pence had a fly on his hair, awesome. I love it, love to see it.
Biden is a gamer.
William's been really into Joe Biden. I mean,
Dude.
I feel like politically speaking, he is very weak, and a lot of people are very upset with him. I would have much preferred Bernie. I won't say otherwise for an instant. But holy hell, even with that, it cannot possibly be a question of, him or Trump, who could it be? Really? I just can't. And obviously the divisiveness of the United States and in general the Western world, it's becoming so divisive. And I know that's not a good thing. I know it's not a good thing. But in this case, I can't imagine a person who's on the fence about Biden or Trump. It's unbelievable to me, because it's like either you're okay with racism and sexism and misogyny and xenophobia, and discrimination and rape and tax evasion and just blatant lying, or you're not, in which case, go with Biden, please. My God. It's just, maybe he's a little bit too much into kids. Sure. He's definitely weak as a politician. He was a vice president, not a president. There's a reason for that. Absolutely. He's very weak-willed, very floppy, limp, and pretty much just a centrist. But oh my God, I would so much rather have, it's hard to say. I would not rather have a centrist than an extremist at the moment, but I would rather have Biden as a person than Trump as a person. That's just how it is. All right, whatever. I can't vote. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. And most of you probably don't care about American politics, or if you do, you only like to joke about it, and you just consider whatever happens, the U.S. loses, which you're right. Whatever ends up happening, America loses. But that's been the case since 2016. Whoever won that election was going to be a loss for us. God knows. Hillary was only better than Trump by a hair, but, please.
Women's card.
Things that came out of her mouth, some of them almost as bizarre as the things that came out of Biden's. Some of them more so. But for us, in terms of recent events for us, I mean, getting into watching some more movies, long weekend and such, theaters are opening up. We've been mainly watching Chinese films, because it just makes sense. Like we said, we watched the 800 a while back. But yeah, I mean, that's what we've been using the theater for is watching the new Chinese films because the Chinese film industry is actually getting into penetrating the West pretty well, which is nice to see, and we want to support that. And then B, it's just there is a very vibrant Asian Chinese community in Calgary, but obviously that's not going to overtake everyone else, right? The general community, which would be going to see just a traditional Hollywood movie in English. So there's always going to be a smaller group of people. So it just works out, right? Because it's a nice little experience for us that we would have gone to see those movies regardless of the quarantine. But now we get the added bonus of there's just not going to be as many people there. So yeah, it all works out. It all works out in the best. So for the best. So we went to see the 800, right, which was the war movie, and then more recently we went to watch a movie called Jia Ziyang.
Yeah.
And remember I had an episode where I talked extensively about the movie Ne Zha, which was an animated movie, the first decent 3D animated film that I've seen China produce, and I think it is the first one ever, because it was by this little independent animator guy who was like who watched like Marvel movies, and he was into animation for a long time, and so he just worked hard for years and years and years crafting this story, and was like, I'm gonna do that, and really followed in Marvel's footsteps as well as anyone could have, because he came out of nowhere, no one had any expectation, and he was using characters that people knew, but no one was like, we need a Ne Zha movie, but people did know the character. So that got some recognition, right? So some people would have gone to see the movie for Ne Zha, some people would have gone to see the movie for an animated movie. Whereas if it was just people who wanted to go see an animated movie, kids movie, that would be a way smaller audience because, like I said, 3D animation in China sucks ass. It's just been terrible so far. So he really did hit that sweet spot in a way that paralleled Marvel that I hadn't even really thought of before, other than just like he tried to imitate their action. He did the post-credit sequences, a lot of stuff like that. So he came out with a stellar animated movie for China standards. And really, I mean, if you want to compare it to Hollywood, to the US's animation standards, it's up there. It's pretty good. It hasn't broken through the threshold, like the ceiling that Pixar has set. But it's definitely higher up than Pixar's worst, right? Like, I would put it above, it's not even need to say, it's leagues above Good Dinosaur, Inside Out, Cars 2. I would say it's somewhere around, maybe I like it better than Cars 1, and I really like Cars 1. I've only seen like one tier list of like someone did a ranking of all the Pixar movies, and they put Cars 1 really far down, and I felt a little offended by that. But then again, they put Inside Out as the number one, so like you're just your brain is like a half off slushy at 7-Eleven. So I think I'll put it above Cars 1, but below. I don't have a full ranking. I'm sure I do, but I'm not going to think of it right now. But it's not as good as, I guess, Toy Story 4 might be my lowest ranked Toy Story movie. Well, it is my lowest ranked Toy Story movie, and it's still a good movie. No, Ne Zha might be better than Toy Story 4, though. Not as good as Bug's Life. Bug's Life is amazing. Not as good as Ratatouille. Not as good as Incredibles 1, but better than Incredibles 2. So let's say it's right above Incredibles 2 and below, below Ratatouille, I guess. People have talked about how amazing Ratatouille is forever, and I believe them 100%. I haven't watched Ratatouille in a long time. I need to rewatch it. I feel very guilty about not having watched it for so long, because I remember, here's the thing, when I was a kid, it just threw me off a little bit, It was like, I had no problems with a movie that was about, a loser chef and a rat. I was totally game for that. I'm not huge on cooking, but I remember I thought like the head chef guy was funny. But I think the animation was what threw me a little bit, because Pixar's animation is always so gorgeous. And don't get me wrong, this was gorgeous too. But like I guess they don't have as many movies with people. That's a big thing. And it's not that their people don't look good, right? It's just that, again, this is like my childhood retrospectively. It's like the girl, I don't remember her name, it just looked weird to me. Maybe it's because she was French. French people are just not a people that I identify with. as in I feel threatened and uncomfortable in the presence of one. And even the main character was just the fact that he was a human. Well, not Raimi, the main human. It's just like, I don't know. I'm just not. I don't connect as much with as I do with characters like, which is I guess ironic to say, but that's the kind of childhood that Pixar and Disney has given me. Of like, I identify more with these animals, or like fucking Wall-E. I fucking love Wall-E to death. The toys, just toys in Toy Story. Pixar, if there's one thing that's incredible about them, is they make inanimate objects more lively than the humans. Like, Andy's alright, but I don't give a shit about, the owl from Al's Toy Barn. I don't give a flying fuck about the guy who scoops up... Oh, that is Al, isn't it? The guy who scoops up, steals, spirits away Woody from his home and, like, that's Al. Yeah, Al from Al's Toy Barn, because he's in the fucking chicken costume. I remember that now. Holy shit. It's been too long since I watched Toy Story 2. It's an amazing movie.
Yeah, there he is.
I don't care about Al. He just looks weird. Although, he was animated great, but he's just freaky. And I don't care that much about Andy, to be perfectly honest. God knows I don't give two flying fucks about Riley from Inside Out. So I definitely should rewatch Ratatouille, because I believe it's a great movie. That I just didn't appreciate as much as a kid. Anyways, so Ne Zha, not as good as Ratatouille, better than, what was the thing I said? Incredibles 2. Not as good as Incredibles 1. Very close. Very close. Incredibles 1 is a good movie. Oh yeah, so Ne Zha I liked a lot. And then this guy came out with a second movie, okay? The first one was a huge success, and he teased the second movie, so it was already planned in the first one. Like I said, he was doing the post-credit scene. He's all into that Marvel shit. And it's another story, not as well-known as Ne Zha, but another one from Chinese mythology, about a hero called Jia Ziyang, right? I would be really embarrassed if I've been saying this wrong the whole time. And... oh, it is Jiang. I've been saying Jia. Fuck. Okay, I knew it sounded wrong. It is Jiang. I knew Jia sounded wrong, but for some reason I didn't change it. I don't know why. Jiang Ziya. Anyways. Damn it. So this guy... you're gonna see a picture of that. So this was his next movie. So obviously with the success of that first one, he's got big studios now who are like, this guy's actually good. We can make money off of him. Let's pick him up and steal his soul, which is fine. That's just the way the industry works. But so we went and watched that movie, and it was a good movie. But I mean, he's been corporatized, and it shows. It wasn't as good as Ne Zha. I didn't like it as much as Ne Zha. I'm willing to allow that a lot of some of the deficits in just the general quality of the animation. There's some things that just look too smooth to look realistic. They were too, or the opposite, they were choppy. Some things, when it's fight scenes, action scenes, where there's supposed to be a lot of fluid movement, some things just didn't flow right. Just little bits of clothing or something that wouldn't flow properly in a way that made sense, or weapons that wouldn't follow physics properly. But it was very minor, it's not like, I don't know, it wasn't any more heinous than Loki getting picked up by Thanos at the start of Infinity War, which is a really awkward scene, and I'm sorry, it doesn't bode well, even though the movie is fantastic, but it's just not a great CG scene. But it's understandable, because that's a computer-generated hand gripping a human neck. So... anyways, it wasn't like heinous, but there was bits that were sloppy, and I'm willing to allow them that was due to complications due to coronavirus, because I know the movie was already delayed due to COVID, and that's obviously going to be rough on anyone. But then plot-wise, there was stuff, like, it was rushed outside of the fact that there was quarantine, outside of the fact that there was the pandemic. It was rushed in his shows, and that's because, again, that first movie he made, I'm sure he spent years perfecting it, especially with, like, the writing. Animation, he could take his sweet time and do it as well as he pleased, but, like, that's what he's good at. The writing, I'm sure, took all the time in the world, poured his heart and soul into it, because he wanted it to succeed. He needed it to succeed, and it did. That's how it works, all right? And then this one, it's like, you can't just wait 10 years for the, not even sequel, just successor to the movie. in the Marvel sense. No one. Can you imagine Marvel succeeding as well as it did if it had taken fucking 8 years for Hulk to come out, and Hulk was in itself already. No, wait. Iron Man 2 came before Hulk or it came after Hulk? Yeah. Right? Hulk is the very next movie?
Yeah.
So I could hardly even imagine, or as much as Hulk already was like in probably worse for the MCU than it was helpful, it's incredible to me. Well, it's because that's why they went with Iron Man 2 instead of something like Captain America or Thor, which they eventually got to, because Hulk just performed so poorly. So thankfully they had Iron Man to bank off of, whereas Iron Man 2 was still not nearly as good as the first Iron Man, but it was an Iron Man movie, which I think is a little too much hate. Again, it's low for Marvel standards, but as a movie, it holds up all right. So it's understandable. I don't blame them for doing that. No one's going to wait a decade for the next one of these animated movies to come out. But yeah, you put things on a deadline, they're going to get rushed, and I hope they're going to be able to sort that out. Or maybe it's one of those things where it'll never be as good as the first. And that happens. There are directors and actors whose first movie is really their only good one forever and ever. I think, I don't know what Adam Sandler's first role was, but the best thing I'll say for him would be the best thing I can think of Adam Sandler is to assume that his first role was amazing, and that was the only good role he was ever in. Honestly, same goes for Nicolas Cage. He was in like one or two good movies. He was in the National Treasure movies. I guess Raising Arizona is technically a good movie. It's funny, but it's stupid. And he's just in a lot of bad movies. Will Smith, incredible actor, amazing actor. The Men in Black, like the first Men in Black movie, maybe the first two, are really his only movies that I would consider good. Pursuit of Happiness was pretty good, but like he's had more success, in like Pursuit of Happiness or whatever was that other one, that one about a picture or whatever. I Am Legend is not good, man. It's not good. People love I Am Legend. I don't know about The Hitch. We should watch The Hitch. It might be really good. Hancock was like all right, but yeah, that action comedy was always what I would have assumed to be his forte, and almost none of them are any good.
Except for Wild Wild West.
Wild Wild West is fantastic. It's a masterpiece. You can't argue with me on that because you haven't seen it. But then like some of his more successful ones were the dramas, and it's like, great, good for you. He's a phenomenal actor when he wants to be, but so there are actors like that. There are directors who have done the same thing. Snyder, what's his full name? Whatever, Bill Snyder, something Snyder. Anyways, he's the guy who fucked up the DCEU by making like literally every single one of their movies, which is idiotic. MCU had Joss Whedon, but like he was their Avengers guy. That was it. Who did they start with? You know who they started with? The fucking guy who directed Elf. All right, that was the way to go. So, Snyder is this guy who was like, he directed
I think it's
Zack Snyder. That's it. He directed the 300, which like I guess is a pretty good movie. It's very iconic, at least I think, but I can't imagine it being much. I can't imagine it being much better than, I was gonna compare it to Avatar because they're slightly more action based. Blue People Avatar. But yeah, Titanic, same idea. It's like really well known James Cameron movies, really successful, and just don't hold up. Whatever. I think 300 is similar to that. It's not incredible, but probably all right. But I think there was one that because I recently just watched listened to a podcast that was talking about Zack Snyder and what the deal with him was, and so his first movie was apparently really good. Oh, did he do V for Vendetta? Is that what he did? No, maybe not. He did Watchmen. He did the Watchmen movie, which the Watchmen comics seem really interesting, and I'm kind of interested in reading those, but I haven't watched any Watchmen or anything.
James McTeague did.
Oh, what the hell did Zack Snyder do? Look, I don't want you to look up V for Vendetta. I want you to look up Zack Snyder and tell me if that's on the list. Anyways, so he's done all of them, I think. All the ones that are canon in the DCEU, which, again, it astounds me. It confounds me that Dark Knight is not canon because it's the most solid. Dawn of the Dead? Wait, did you say Dawn of the Dead?
Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead?
No, Dawn of the Dead.
Just Dawn of the Dead? Just a regular zombie? Well, okay, yes, his zombie movie, that was the one they liked. And I think that was his first movie. So he did one good zombie apocalypse movie, which is already a pretty low ceiling for how good it could be. And apparently all the rest of his movies have been all right.
Squad 2 for 2021.
They're making it. I don't know why or how, and people are like excited about it. I don't know. But yeah, so he's made all the other ones, starting from Man of Steel, which doesn't that go right into Batman v Superman? That's idiotic. So he's made all of those, and people love him. The DC fans love him, and it's like, why? He's ruined every single one of your movies. But it's like, oh no, and there's this obsession with the thing called the Snyder Cut of the Justice League movie, because apparently I think he still directed it, but like they cut a bunch of scenes out that Snyder would include, and there's this obsession with the idea that the Snyder Cut of Justice League is going to be way better than the rest of it, which is like, why? Man of Steel was terrible. Batman v Superman was terrible. That was the fucking Snyder Cut of those movies, okay? He made them. They gave him free reign. It was terrible. Just accept it. Anyway, so this Snyder guy, a similar situation where he had one good movie and no others. So it's entirely possible that that's how this is going to be with this guy, this animator. You know, he's going to have, and it's not like Zhang Ziao was bad, but it's like, it's possible that that's the new standard of quality for his films, and it's going to be, you know, all the rest are going to be, that's the average. They're all going to sit somewhere around slightly better, slightly worse, and then none of them will ever be as good as Ne Zha or better. It's possible. Maybe not. Maybe he's going to figure something out. Maybe the next one, he's going to take a year or two extra. Maybe because there's no coronavirus, he'll do way better. And then the movies, it'll be like the Marvel movies, or sometimes they come out with just a fucking straight, bright, phenomenon of a movie. And then the other ones are just like, meh. And then the other ones are like, that's a Marvel movie. I enjoyed that. It's just not amazing. But only time will tell. But this Zhang Ziya movie, I enjoyed it. It's about a guy who, it's about this, well, okay, so the villain, the antagonist of the story is a fox spirit, which is very common in Chinese culture. I want to drop this little bomb on you guys. If for anyone out there who's a weeb that isn't really invested in Chinese culture, but has got like the Japanese culture, or is into like that video game culture of the online gaming, if you've encountered nine-tailed foxes, you know, in your journey as a human being, yeah, I just want to, if you weren't aware, that's Chinese. Nine-tailed foxes are a Chinese concept, all right? The Japanese saw that because in Chinese, it's Chinese mythology where all this comes from. Japan is the fucking Rome of East Asia, all right? Okay, and China is Greece. So the Chinese had this idea of like a tier list of beings where humans were above animals, which I disagree with, but whatever. I disagree with all that spiritualism crap. But the point is, as a mythology, there was like gods, there were people in heaven, and there was humans on earth, and there was animals, plants, rocks, and I guess like just general nature. Like I think, you know, the wind and the water all kind of fell into that someplace, and they have their own place in the system, in the cycle, right? And anything could pretty much get to immortality if they meditated and just cultivated themselves for long enough. So humans who were one step below heaven had the easiest time. If they cultivated their minds and bodies, you know, that's where you get monks. And that's Buddhist monks, that's their goal, is to achieve immortality by meditating and studying and practicing, or whatever it is they decide that needs to be done until they can achieve enlightenment and ascend, right? But animals can do that, the same thing. Animals can become immortals as well, but first they have to get through the step of humans. They can't just skip. It is a hierarchy. It's a tier list. So for an animal to become an immortal, they have to first become human, and then they become immortal. And I guess there's certain animals that were deemed more skilled in this, right? I guess the cunning ones. So foxes were one that was pretty common. Foxes were known to, they're hugely, it's wildly popular in Chinese mythology culture for foxes, because I guess they're cunning and sneaky, right? To cultivate themselves to becoming humans, and they enter the human world. And I guess if they're nice, which they usually aren't, they'll just keep cultivating themselves until they become immortal. But I think some of them just stop at being human, which is fair, right? That's way better than being an animal as it is. And they just end up kind of causing trouble. Anyways, in general, they're just ousted in a similar way that witches are in Western society. where it's like a person who is, they're not human, so they get ostracized for that, and very often they do end up doing bad things. So it really was their equivalent of witch, because it was usually a female fox woman. Anyway, so fox women is a Chinese concept, and nine-tailed fox is a Chinese concept, and there's some overlap between that, but not really, because you wouldn't have a nine-tailed fox woman unless you're from Japan, where, you know, they came over and they're fucking constantly thirsty as all can be. So I guess at one point, while they were busy, symbolically and physically raping China, they were like, wait a second, they have foxes that turn into people? That sounds like furry to me. And so they took the idea, and now in Japanese culture, you got nine-tailed foxes, and then humans with fox ears and cat ears and tails and whatever the hell you want. So they were in it for the aesthetic and for the fuckability. The Chinese were in it because it allowed them to segregate women. So, you know, it's all good all around, really. All good things in Eastern Asia. And I'm so glad consumer culture has allowed them to explode into the Western world as they have. Anyways, ejaculate, if you will. Ejaculate their culture and trade all over the West. So, sorry, nine-tailed foxes are not a Japanese thing, they're a Chinese thing. Fuck you, fuck off, they stole everything from China. But that's the villain, is a nine-tailed fox, spirit type person thing. Demon, I guess you would call her, demoness. And she runs the Fox clan, and so there's just a bunch of other foxes. Real foxes, spirit foxes, whatever, the line blurs. Again, when anything can become an immortal, it's kind of, there's a blurred line between mortal and spiritual. So they wage war on the humans. Humans defeat them. Jiang Ziya is there, helps defeat. They imprison the nine-tailed fox spirit in a mask. I don't know, whatever, a specialized mask. That was one of my mom's complaints as far as cultural accuracy went. The mask was very westernized, kind of like, not even westernized, maybe even Japanized, which again, because the Japanese have way more cultural impact on youth than China, unfortunately. So yeah, it was kind of like a kabuki type mask that you would not see in Chinese mythology, right? But anyways, so they trapped her in this mask thing, and these immortal divine people, which again my mom said did not look like immortals from Chinese mythology, which they didn't, because in China they just look like old people with beards and things. That's pretty much it, old people in robes. But they made them all look like, I don't know, some Star Wars High Council or something. It was kind of weird, you know, something like from God of War maybe, I don't know. But so they were like, okay, this person's evil, you gotta execute her. And then Jiang Ziya was like, dope, I'm all about that, doing good things, because then he gets to be immortal. Because this was like humans, there was a staircase, it was just a physical staircase, because why not, connecting the human world and the heaven, so that any human could become immortal if they so desired, right? But they had to be deemed worthy or whatever. So this guy had proven himself in battle, so it's like, you can become an immortal if you just kill this person for us. Easy, because she's already captured. So he goes, and then before he's about to kill her, she's like, oh, but look, if you kill me, you'll kill this innocent person. And he's like, who? And then he looks within her, and he sees this mortal girl, just a little girl chilling out inside of her. And he's like, what, you like possessed a human or something, or what's going on? And she's like, I won't tell you, haha. And so he doesn't kill her, he hesitates, and he's like, I need to free the girl first. So he like cuts a chain off or something, and he's like, I'll free the girl and then kill. And that allows the fox spirit to escape. She's still got the mask on, and she doesn't have her powers, but she escapes to the human world. And it's like, dude, you fucked up. You just released this evil that we've been spending so long to capture back into they just fought a whole war. Come on, man. So they are like, you can't be an immortal until you've... they don't even ask him to like make up by going to kill her. They're just like, I guess that's a problem for some other hero now. They just want him to abandon, like let go of those thoughts, doubts, and regrets about the girl they saw, because they say it was a vision that the spirits the demon put in his mind, to sow doubt, whatever. It's an illusion, it was all fake, whatever. So they're like, you gotta let go of that, you gotta forget about it, because it's not real, and just accept that's an illusion, and then you can come and be an immortal. And so that's where you start the movie, is he's like, that was all like a narrated prologue type thing. And you start the movie, and he's just chilling, and he's just sitting alone trying to do as they say, and he just can't, because he keeps playing the scene over in his mind. He's like, I can't stop thinking about it. And the general idea is that his thinking is, if even if there's the slightest chance that there was a human, innocent human in who would have been killed if I had killed this witch demon person, then I can't. I have to save her before I kill the villain. And because he doesn't believe that it's fake, he's just like, it feels too real. Anyway, so over the course of the movie, he just goes on this journey and essentially finds out, he finds the girl, and it turns out, oh wow, so that vision was totally real. Suck it, Heaven, you were wrong, you fool. And so that's what you think for most of the movie, as he's traveling along with this girl. And eventually you just discover that, Heaven was totally the one. They knew that the girl was real. They were just straight up lying to him. And it just kind of, the rabbit hole just keeps getting deeper and deeper as you find out Heaven was just fucking with Earth. So their idea is it's kind of one of those systems of hardline justice, like uncompassionate justice, where the idea was that they wanted to sacrifice the Fox clan, which hadn't done anything wrong, and get them to start a war so that the humans would eliminate the Fox clan. So they told the Fox to start the war. They told the nine-tailed fox to start the war with the humans, and in return, I think they were gonna give her and her clan a safe place in heaven or something. I don't remember exactly, but they struck up a deal essentially. And instead, when the humans won the war against the foxes, they just imprisoned all of them, right? The fox, again, obviously the fox escaped, nine-tailed fox escaped, but all her clan people were actually not imprisoned, they were just killed. Their souls were imprisoned, so they couldn't get into heaven, right? Because that's the thing, is when you die, your soul's supposed to go into heaven, and you reincarnate. So because there's this idea of reincarnation, death itself, death of the physical form is not a huge deal in this movie. It's the fact that their souls couldn't get into heaven, and therefore couldn't reincarnate. That's what sucked, and that was like, that's not cool, dude. And this is like the very end of the movie that all this gets revealed. You're slowly over time learning, like, wait a second, heaven, you guys knew, that the girl was real? That's not cool. And they're like, what are you gonna do? And then he's like, wait a second, so you knew not only that, but you knew like that the girl was gonna die, and you knew who she was. Like, oh, well, it's on you. And they try to turn around, and they're like, you can't do that. That's not how heaven works. You can't, because the idea is compassion, and he's like, isn't heaven supposed to be compassionate toward and protect humans? And it's like, yes, but if you specifically protect one human, that becomes selfish, or not, well, selfish if it's yourself, or unjust, right? That's unfair to the rest of people because you're showing special treatment. So the idea is like, you should sacrifice the one human to save the rest of the world, which, because of the ultimatum the heaven set up, obviously, again, at the end you find out it was all a setup, but you're working under the impression that, which is true, that if he had killed the fox, nine-tailed fox, it would have killed the girl, but then humans would have had peace. Humans would have had peace because all the foxes would be dead. And screw the foxes, right? The humans would have been fine. And the world wouldn't have been at peace. The war would have been over and everything. But because Jiang Ziya's idea is that every life is of equal value, then it's what's unfair is to sacrifice one girl, as if her life is worth less than all the others, right? Makes sense. Differing opinions, both are morally gray, and so you kind of get to decide what you think is right. But generally, you're supposed to lean on the side of Jiang Ziya. And for me, I love it when movies make these things simple, or they simplify very complex. They don't simplify the complex concepts themselves. They take complex concepts and they say, you gotta make of it what you will. You draw your own conclusions, and they give you something that's nice and simple to help you with that, which in this case is the fact that heaven lied. So they were in the wrong there. Whatever you think of their morality versus their sense of justice versus Jiang Ziya's sense of justice, you can't pretend like heaven was in the right when they were lying, because they were lying to not just Jiang Ziya. They lied to Jiang Ziya throughout the entire movie, and they lied to the whole of humanity. They lied to the nine-tailed fox by promising her fox clan's protection. So even if you agree with their morals, their actions were wrong. So in the end, heaven was the real villain. The nine-tailed fox is not much better because she was trying to kill everyone. She's trying to kill Jiang Ziya. She's trying to she was trying to get her powers back because the girl. What ended up happening was the fox spirit had come to Earth by possessing the girl. and then the girl was like supposed to marry the king or the emperor, and she did, and so that gave her, you know, this really high standing. This is a historical part of this, by the way, is in actual Chinese history, there was an empress who was, well, not an empress, but just the consort of an emperor who was terrible, right? Like, the emperor was just kind of wishy-washy, but his wife was the one who was really terrible and evil, and she would, you know, Caligula type stuff. She, like the Roman emperor, she was really cruel and would enjoy watching people get executed for no reason and whatnot. So people made up all kinds of things. Again, it's like when you demonize a woman in Western culture, but I'm like, she must be a witch. They're like, she must be a nine-tailed fox spirit. And so this was the story of that, where it was a nice young girl, because, you know, it maybe retrospectively it's weird, but it wasn't weird in the context of the time that the story is set in, for the emperor to be marrying a teenage girl. That was the thing that people got out of it, was that Jiang Ziya, who's a pretty old dude, he's like a middle-aged guy, had a romantic relationship with the girl, and it's like that wasn't there at all. It was almost paternal, but really more just a protection of life kind of thing. So the girl got possessed by the fox spirit, and that's how she got into that high position in the, of course, emperor's court, so that she was able to start destroying China from the inside out, and then eventually revealed herself as, I'm the evil nine-tailed fox, not a human, and then all-out war broke out, etc., etc., etc. But her spirit was tied to the girl she had possessed, so if you killed her, it would have killed the girl. But then when Jiang Ziya, he actually got very close to freeing the girl, because he cut some chains that were binding them together, you know, whether you take that as being symbolic or physical chains. And so they were separated. That's why he was able to find the girl, and she had like the little fox ears, again, just exclusively for the furry aspect of it. But anyway, so some people thought she was a fox spirit, and it's like, and she keeps denying it through the whole movie, and of course Jiang Ziya doesn't believe her. It's like, you are a fox because I saw you inside the fox spirit, and you got like fox ears, you know, there's not really much going for you there. And then in the end you find out she's not technically lying, because she didn't know she was connected to the fox spirit because she was possessed. So she got split off, and then the nine-tailed fox herself got dropped somewhere in the forest. But the girl ended up with, I guess, most of her powers. It's a Harry Potter Horcrux type situation. So, you know, part of her soul or her powers lived within that girl. So she had some random magic powers that she didn't know how to use. But the nine-tailed fox wanted to get her and suck the powers out so she could have her powers. And so she wasn't a very good person either, because that would have killed the girl, of course, or really seriously screwed her up. That's not the point. I'm not here to give a synopsis of the movie, even though that's what I just did. What ended up coming from this, though, was that a lot of people who watched the movie didn't like it very much, because they not because of like the merits of the movie's quality technically, but because they didn't agree with the story or the message that the movie told, and that's pretty silly. But so because the idea they had was, well, they ended up they just agreed with heaven in the end, which is pretty silly, pretty ridiculous, because yeah, they thought that that would have been a better sacrifice. Like, oh, who cares? You know, if the girl is innocent, sacrifice one girl, the rest of humanity is saved. And like I said, in these morally gray situations, it is difficult to come to. You can't say one thing is right or wrong. And normally, I'm actually pretty brutal with these types of things, right? I'm often all for like I'm the kind of guy who agrees with Thanos, right? The easiest thing, I had a whole episode about this, genocide, simplest solution. The easiest thing to do for fixing humanity's problems is to cut down on overpopulation, and the fastest way to cut down on overpopulation is to immediately just kill a lot of people. Half might be a bit much. I mean, half would be a good number, but I'm generous, so I'd be willing to say like a third, you know? Because that would already be a huge difference. Anyways, so I'm pretty harsh about those types of things, and I'm willing to adjust my moral compass to allow for the loss of human life, if that is for the greater good, absolutely. But like I said, this movie does a nice job of being like, you can believe what morals you want, but the way that heaven went about applying their morality was wrong from whatever perspective, because they had to lie to get there. Yes, maybe you could argue one way or the other. I would say it's morally gray, and there's really no way to say whether it's right or wrong for Jiang Ziya to either defeat the nine-tailed fox and kill the innocent girl at the same time, thus saving humanity, or not kill, allow the nine-tailed fox to live, but also spare the girl's life, thus jeopardizing humanity, but not like immediately destroying humanity. It's not like, oh, let's sacrifice every human alive for the one girl. That wouldn't make any sense. It's just jeopardizing them because it's releasing the fox spear, and then she's out there somewhere and could make a comeback. Again, like Voldemort. So that, I would say, is morally gray. I would say half of people could believe one way, half could believe the other, and I wouldn't have a complaint either way. But because the only reason that's an ultimatum that exists is because the Immortals first lied to the fox and made her start the war in the first place. If the Immortals hadn't done that, then the humans would not have been in that situation where it's either kill the nine-tailed fox and sacrifice that innocent girl, or they die themselves. That's not a situation that would have ever happened. I think the only reason, I guess, the Immortals set that up because I suppose it was one of those not willing to take a risk things where they saw maybe that the foxes could potentially, or I guess there was conflict between the Fox clan and the humans, right? And they were like, well, I guess we should just, the way to have no more conflicts is just have one big war and then end it for good, right? I guess I can only assume that was the idea. Either way, they're a bunch of assholes, and I can't understand why anyone agrees with them, and I think they're just missing a lot of it. And again, you could blame the movie for this, because it some elements of the storytelling in it are, I don't want to say sloppy, but they're blurry. So, some plot elements you kind of have to look into it. You have to watch the movie pretty closely to get and appreciate and understand. So I'm willing to believe that some people who disagree with this movie's message just weren't paying enough attention. But I think other people, it's willful ignorance. So one of the major scenes of the movie that I think isn't given as much weight and importance as it should is the scene where Jiang Ziya is traveling with the girl, and they encounter this just beast of some sort. It's constructed of human bones and like held together with some kind of spirit energy. It's just like this freakish, terrifying bone dragon type thing. Eastern dragon, not Western. And it chases them around, and it really can't be stopped. It's basically created out of like damned souls that can't get into heaven. All right. So they can't defeat it. So what do to get away from it is the Chinese culture has these bone chimes. Right? It's actually really fucking metal. Bone chimes of the deceased made of bones of the deceased that they will hang up on clothesline looking things. It's like it's like a real metal version of the prayer flags, which is another Buddhist tradition. But instead it's these bone chimes, and so when the wind blows through them, the clinking of the bones is supposed to be a sound that helps appease restless spirits and potentially get them to heaven. Maybe not. I don't know. Either way, it's supposed to help them though. And so they found a bunch of those hanging up for people who had died in battle, because again, this was in the fallout of a war. So they had died in battle, hadn't gotten proper burials, so they couldn't go to heaven, so they had bone chimes out. And they happened to be carrying one of these bone chimes on them, so they found out, oh, it's like teaching the T-Rex to fetch its own rib bone, in Night at the Museum. It's like, it's a funny gag, but it's not really. It's because they found out that the beast was attracted to the bone chimes, and so they threw the bone chimes down into like a canyon, and they just followed after them, so they escaped. And I think a lot of people missed that that's like the underlying point of the movie. At least for me it is, because that is the point. They don't explicitly state it there because, again, some of the pacing, some of the ordering of the storytelling is unconventional, maybe not perfectly polished. But way later in the movie, when it seems like on a completely unrelated note, they're talking about how heaven lied to everyone and jeopardized humanity for their own, whatever their agenda was, right? You're seeing the results of that. See, that's why it's backwards. You're seeing the results of heaven's crimes before you see before you learn the crimes. You work your way backwards. So you got to remember those results in order to understand why the crimes were bad. Because what they did was, through their actions, what their results were, damning human souls and later we find out fox souls alike to be unable to enter heaven because of this war they caused, because of this rift. Right, so even though it seemed like they were being so nice, because you start out learning, you start the movie with being talking about this stairway to heaven that exists, so that allows any humans that want to become immortals. But it's like the humans that have died, their souls are not being respected, so they can't get to heaven. So the idea of Jiang Ziya wasn't saving this girl from being killed because like he had a particular affection for the girl. It was because it wasn't to protect. He wasn't protecting the one girl at the cost of all humanity. He was protecting the one girl, and at the same time, although possibly jeopardizing the living humans, it was allowing the dead humans to enter heaven and find peace. Not really heaven. Again, there's levels of heaven and things. The afterlife, all right. Allow their souls to move on to the afterlife and then be reincarnated, which they weren't able to do. This girl was gonna die no matter what, because they had to break the connection. The connection that the nine-tailed fox had created between her and the girl was unbreakable in a lifetime, as in it was like because their bodies were bonded, which is a concept that exists in a lot of mythologies, right? Like a spirit bond, a life bond, whatever you call it. So the idea was that she had to die to break it. But see, in Chinese mythology, that's no biggie because she'll be immediately reincarnated, or almost immediately. And they were like, all right, that's what's going to happen. So Jiang Ziya was actually letting her go die. They brought her to this like spiritual location that's like, you walk through this door, it's like the Sirius Black Gateway. You walk through this, you die, but you get to reincarnate. And so she was prepared for that. He was prepared to sacrifice her for that. Because that's for the better. It's not like dying is in the conventionally Western sense. But what ended up happening was she ended up in kind of like a limbo place for the finale of the movie, because turns out that's where they found out like the final lie of heaven, the nail in the coffin, was that she wasn't going to be able to reincarnate, because they ended up bringing her, the place they were told to bring her to was actually where all the other fox spirits were being kept, from all the foxes that had been killed and were unable to go to heaven. So she, I guess, was just being treated like a fox at that point rather than a human. Just trying to get rid of her. So that was what it was all about, right? It wasn't saving this one girl. It was to right the wrongs that heaven had committed, which were in the first place unjust, because they sacrificed a lot of human and fox life by lying to everyone and causing a war. And also in that they prevented human and fox souls alike from reincarnating, so thus cutting them off, making them restless and unsatisfied in their death, undignified. So that's just like, and this is Chinese people I'm talking about who didn't like the movie and just didn't get the whole point. So you had to be paying attention to that movie to get it. So I thought the messaging was fine. Like I said, some of the structure of the movie, some of the animation wasn't as good as in other movies, or in his first movie, but it was an alright movie, right? And I feel like you have to be fair to it. You have to appreciate what it did do well, and not, be thinking the wrong thing. So a lot of people didn't get it. They didn't get the point, which is too bad for them. Too bad. But as I say, we've been into some movies lately. Another movie we watched. Oh man, I don't know if I have time for this. This is a whole other half hour. Well, another movie we watched was a movie that's been on my list on Netflix for a while, because we saw the cover and we read the description of it, and it just seems so stupidly ridiculous that I was like, I'm gonna watch this at some point. And lo and behold, I said that, and yet as we were going to watch it, I was saying to William, I never thought I'd see the day. I never thought we'd actually watch this. It just felt like one of those things that's like always a year or two away, no matter what time. It's like, yeah, we'll watch that in some point. This is a movie I've been seeing on Netflix for probably 5-6 years, about as long as we've had Netflix. Okay, as long as I've had a personal Netflix account, or yeah, I guess personal Netflix account, not one that I pay for, but like the one with the personalized recommendations and such. It's been on there. It's been on there for years. I can't believe it hasn't been taken off. It's just, I can't imagine a single person who's interested in watching it. It's called Underdogs. And here's the premise of the movie, according to Netflix, all right, is this boy who has, what do they call it, a magically incarnated foosball team. Okay. If you don't know, foosball is a game that's based on soccer where you have two teams of players, which are just like little pegs, essentially, controlled by sticks on like a pool table type thing, smaller than a pool table. And you just have these rods that you turn, and you drop a ball in there, and you turn them, and all they can do is just kick the ball towards the other person's goal, and then the other person try to kick the ball away from their goal towards your goal. That's how it works. Incidentally, it's more exciting than actual soccer because there's more scoring than in actual soccer, which is crazy to me. But, so first of all, the premise of this game is a kid who's really good at playing foosball. All right. So right off the bat, it's like, it can't get any better than the B plot of, not even the B plot, like the D or E plot of Harry Potter, the first Harry Potter book, which is Ron's really good at chess, and then that never comes up again a single time. So it's a kid who's good at playing foosball, exciting, and he has a foosball team that Netflix's verbatim description is magically incarnated, and they're gonna help him confront his childhood rival, who's returned. And I don't know if they mentioned the rematch in the description. He's returned for a rematch. It's a very vague way of putting it. And that's what we got. That's what we knew about the movie before watching it. And we saw that and went, this is going to be a good movie. So we went and watched this thing. All right, and here's what it's about. All right, here's what it's really about. Let me give you this. So we start with the boy, sad sack of shit, who can play foosball. Good for him. And he plays foosball in like this bar. Or I don't know why he's even allowed there, but it's this bar in this tiny whatever town. And there's this kid named, I don't even remember the main kid's name. And his rival is this kid named Ace. Okay, he's this like star athlete type guy. He's really good at football, like actual football, soccer. And he's just, I guess in general, good at everything. They don't really mention that part. They're just like, he's great at soccer, but then he's also apparently perfect at everything else too. So why even specify? And so he's the classic bully guy who picks on all the other kids, whatever. He's picking on this foosball kid, and he's like, and the foosball kid's like, and then his love interest for the movie is like, what the fuck's wrong with you, you sad little limp dick bitch? You can beat this kid. That's like the one thing you're good at. Come on. And so the kid, Ace, in his hubris, is like, I can beat you at anything. I can beat you at foosball, this stupid little children's game. And because no one's good at foosball unless they're a loser, he gets beaten by the loser who's good at foosball. Makes sense. Ace is shamed out of the town or something. I don't know. I don't think he leaves and never comes back from that moment. There's no parents involved in this. I don't think anyone has any parents in this movie. So that's the opening sequence, is they're little kids, and he beats this kid who's apparently amazing at everything in a game of foosball. He's a winner. He's a hero, right? Everyone's like really impressed and happy about that. And then time skipped him as an adult, and apparently that hasn't done anything for him. I really need to take a shit. I can't keep doing this. Oh, okay. So anyways, yeah, they time skip like whatever 10, 15 years or something, and right off the bat, they've gone a completely different direction with this than like any movie I've ever watched. Like, they entirely ignore the, Marty McFly route of, this guy had a life-changing experience where he beat the bully, and so now his life is turned for the better. And it's like, no, because it's the start of the movie. So even though he had that victory, he's still a sad loser playing foosball in this random bar as an adult. And so immediately, that's kind of odd. It's weird that they would show him beating this guy in the first place. I don't know. It's a weird power dynamic they've created. It really threw me for a loop because I've never watched a movie that starts with that, where the protagonist beats the antagonist, and so the antagonist is at that point where it's like they have to live with that simmering with that regret of losing to this loser, and the protagonist has beat the demon in their life. Like, what is the only thing holding him back is just the plot and his own sad loserness. It's weird, and not great storytelling to begin with. So time skips forward, and he's an adult, and now Ace comes back, and we don't know where he came back from. It never explains where he left to, but I guess he stormed out of that bar and just kept walking until he was in a different country or something. He comes back, and it's, the classic sequence, whatever. Okay, in general, he's had a super hugely successful career in soccer. He's incredibly rich. And so here we get a scene where it starts kind of the theme of this movie of being like a really bad movie and funny because of how bad it is, how poorly it's structured and whatnot. And then also sometimes really funny because the jokes occasionally are absolutely hilarious and they have no right to be that funny. It was such a weird experience for my brother and I watching this. It was like we would watch it and be laughing with it, and then we'd be laughing at it, and it would just switch constantly. So there was like one scene here, and this really blurred the line of, I don't know if this is a hilarious joke or if the people who wrote the movie actually just don't know how money and law works. But the guy shows up with a deed to the city, and he goes, "I've bought this town. I bought the town. I'm gonna build a soccer stadium on it. I'm gonna wipe out the entire, like flatten the entire town and build a soccer stadium on it. I don't know what for. I don't know what, like, is he gonna be the only person playing soccer games in there? If a place needs a soccer stadium, like, they will have one built by the city. So if he just wants to look at it or what, but he's purchased the town, and the mayor's cool with this. They have a little funny sequence of that, and he's gonna build a soccer stadium, and like the kid is of course like, oh no, you can't do this, but everyone else doesn't care because they love Ace or something like that, even though they all hated him when he was a kid. But now he looks cool or something, and of course, Ace remembers this guy. He's like, oh, he's the guy who beat me. So to rub in his face, he has this big crane come and destroy the bar with the foosball table that he would play at. And he's like, oh, he's all upset. And then he finds the foosball table still there. And then a big crane comes down and takes specifically the foosball table away. And it's like, all right, so Ace is just being a dick and is like, I'm gonna take away the thing you love. And speaking of which, then like the love interest who's still here, climbs into Ace's like jet thing to, I guess, try and convince him not to build this thing on the town. She's yelling at him, as he's walking to the jet, and then continues the conversation after he gets in the jet, climbs in after him, and then he just closes the door on her. Like, she climbs into the shotgun seat, okay, and sits in it, not like just climbing into it, just sits down as if she's going to ride, but she doesn't actually want to go with him. Then he just closes the door on her and flies away, and she can't get out. And it's like, that's bizarre on so many levels. Like, okay, the villain kidnapped the girl because he liked the girl and he wanted the girl and she doesn't like him, but like, she put herself in a really bad situation and also kidnapping? What? Bizarre. So he takes her to like his mansion thing, which I guess is pretty close to this town. I don't know if he had it built right before coming here, or if like Ace's grand return was him driving half an hour into town. It was around this point, actually a little bit later, but at some point in watching the movie, we Googled it and found out it was actually a Spanish movie to begin with that got translated. So that explained a lot. At the start, we just thought like the mouth movement was awful, but then it turns out it's just because it was dubbed, right? But it still was so that also explains the obsession with soccer and whatnot. But so we're following this plot along, all right? And so you kind of got a clear idea of this kid's got to get the girl back, and also he's sad about the foosball thing, and so he goes and he like he only has one or three of his little foosball players left, and he's got, oh yeah, I forgot about this. The fucking foosball players are customized, and as I was just explaining about foosball, they're just like typically they're just little colored plastic whatevers that look roughly human shaped. And these ones are fully customized, and this loser starts the movie, he goes and explains them all. They all have names and backstories. And holy shit. So they got this leader, Skip, and he's like all sad. He's holding Skip, and he cries on Skip. And his tears bring it to life, all right, which is some Alice in Wonderland bullshit, or like Wizard of Oz or something. I don't know. or I guess tangled. What? I'm not sure. So his tears. I was going with tangled for a second. His tears bring the thing to life, and oh my god, he cries on the foosball. I can't even get it out. He cries on the foosball player, and he comes to life. All right. So fine, magic is in this movie. All right, magically incarnated. That's what it meant. So now he's got Skip, and he's like, "Oh, we got to get the rest of the foosball guys back, and I guess your girlfriend too, or something." And so he goes to the dump because they're like, "Oh, where would the foosball table be? It's the dump." They go to the dump and find the foosball table, and they find 2 other players, and they've all come to life already. The other ones are like still strapped onto their spots on the foosball table. So somehow him crying on one player brought all the players to life. Why did the foosball table not come to life? I mean, there's just so many questions. And then I can't even get into it. It's impossible to even get into it in the last half of this episode. But like then you see this is the green team there because there's 2 teams on a foosball table, right? So then you see this red piece. There's one of the red players shows up who also came to life, and then you have to start asking questions like, wait, so this kid spent all his life growing up playing exclusively the green team? That's just not how foosball works. In foosball, you don't give a shit what team you're on. You just play whichever one is available. You're telling me you only ever played green team, gave them all names and backstories, and like just didn't bother talking about the red team at all? Do you realize like you can't? This is why this is not a thing. Foosball teams aren't a thing you play at the table, because if you were to go to like a tournament, those tables are bolted to the floor. You don't just bring your foosball table. It's not like fucking marbles. You don't bring your collection of foosball players with you. They're all the same. It doesn't matter. You just use the ones that are at the table. It's so weird that they build this connection between the guy and the pieces, not to mention bringing them to life. Of all the things, like why would they think that this made sense? It's like someone just thought it'd be funny to make a movie about foosball and then just didn't actually know anything about foosball and didn't care because they knew the audience wouldn't care about foosball either, I guess. So none of this is making any sense so far, but at the very least you have a plot, right? It's like living foosball people are going to help him get the girl back. But first they got to try and find the rest of the team, right? And Ace's like manager guy comes to pick up the rest of the foosball players. All right, they take them away, and they're like, "Oh no, they're getting away." And you don't know why he wants them, but you assume it's for some malicious purposes. So it's just the 3 green team guys and the 1 red team guy with the kid. They're chasing after the guy who has the box with all the other players in it. And it's like Ace called the Claw to come in and pick up the foosball table. If he wanted the players, he could have gotten them then. Why did he put them in the dump? He's the one who put them in the dump and then sent another guy to go to the dump and find the players. Okay, so they're following them in a car, I guess, driving after him. There's a whole side plot that's like developing these for some reason just developing the 4 foosball players that we're with, even though we know they all have names and personalities and shit. But it's like, no, we're just gonna focus on these random 4 that we picked out. And they go through this whole thing. Like one of them has an entire story arc where he loses his hair, which he loves, and then he has to go find replacement hair. It's like it turns into Toy Story 4 at one point where they're in a carnival and all this shit is happening. It's like, all right. And at this point, I wasn't lost. I was just like, this is a ridiculous movie. But then you realize, like, this is not a long movie. It's less than 2 hours long. It's like an hour, 50 minutes. And you're a quarter of the way through the movie, and they're just, like, developing 4 of these guys. And it's like, all right, well, surely that's because the plot is kind of where it's at, right? It's like the end of the movie is going to be he gets the girl back, so we got plenty of time to get there. Well, guess what? We start to learn that that's not the case at all. First of all, this movie moves at breakneck speeds. That's my favorite thing about this movie. It was insane how fast-paced it was. Lines are being delivered back and forth with no pause. There's not like a single establishing shot in the entire movie. It's just cut to a guy, they're doing a thing, they do a thing which is a setup for another thing. There's no like slow pan over to the little, like, again, you're comparing it to Toy Story where these little inanimate objects are going around in the human world, and there's this one shot, like, there's no shot where the toys, like, playing with some human toys, like, I don't know, playing with some Barbie clothes or something. And he falls over and he follow his gaze upwards and he sees, oh, the thing they're gonna need, or like a cat or something, it's gonna start chasing him. No, there's not that. It'd just be like that scene, which leads to a cut to the next thing, and then he's like, oh, this is the thing that I'm doing now. And then he's running, and then he runs into the other guy. It's like, hey, what's going on? Oh, I'm looking for this thing. Oh, we're doing this now. And their lines are just going one after another. There's no breath, no pauses. I don't know if this is a Spanish thing, but I loved it because there was that's the only thing that I think made this movie watchable, was if it had been slow, that would have been suffering. And it's not something I ever considered, that a bad movie could be made so much better if you just didn't have to wait and let it sink in. You were just watching new shit happen all the time. So it was so fast paced, and it's all this stuff, and we're like, okay, they're developing the characters, great. Now they're gonna go get the girl. So the girl is with the ace, right, at his mansion, and he's like trying to win her over or whatever, and she's not having any of it. And so they tail this the manager guy to the mansion, and they're like gonna go bust her out, right? And so they're sneaking in. And there's some jokes in this that are just incredible, and this is, I think, the best joke in the entire movie. The guy confronts Ace, and Ace is like getting into his helicopter and pulling the girl along. He's like, "You're never gonna get to me, you loser." And he's like, "No, stop!" And then he's trying to get to the girl, but he can't, and he doesn't in time. He closes the door and he flies away in his helicopter, and they're like looking after it forlornly, and then he flies like a few meters away, and then lands on the ground again and gets out and is like, we're going into this thing. It's like like on his enormous front lawn, he's got some secret little shed thing, right? And the girl's like, couldn't we just have walked? And he's like, I'll have to increase my carbon footprint. And I thought that was hilarious. I don't know if it's funny at all, but it was really funny to me and William. But anyway, so he flew his helicopter over, and then he walks in the shed, so the kid follows him in with his toys. And they go down, and at this point, I'm like, okay, surely we're near the end of the movie. Wrong, we're halfway through the movie. Not even, okay? This is second act stuff, right? So he's going to get the girl back, and he's following Ace down here, and Ace shows this girl his, like, secret underground laboratory, okay? So it was Toy Story 4 up until this point. Now it's Zootopia, all right? This guy, this Ace, we've established his character. He's the bully who was really good at everything, but it has a vendetta against the protagonist because he lost. That's the only time he ever lost in his life, was to that foosball game, all right? So you're expecting at some point he's going to be like challenging a kid to a rematch against foosball. No, apparently he doesn't care. He doesn't give a shit about that, right? Which is good. Good for him. He's moved on, right? He just wants to destroy the entire town, right? He doesn't have a personal thing against the boy or anything, right? But he wanted the foosball players. So what's he going to do with foosball players? Here's the big reveal. This guy has been Zootopiaing, but with sportswear instead of animals, all right? Well, no, there is animals involved, actually. So his big plan, his underground scheme thing, I don't know how this plays into his character at all from what we already established, but this is the new thing, is he's been, I guess, while being a soccer player, also doing, like, I guess, illegal experiments combining animals and sports equipment, okay? So he has, like, they give two examples. They have some what was it? It wasn't bird. He had pigeon mascots, which was, I guess, birds attached to like flyers or pom poms or something. And then he had, was it also birds that were soccer balls? Was it just a different type? There was a quick shot of like an animal that had been fused with a soccer ball.
I didn't see that one, but I know there was like ribbon things.
Yeah, there was like strings attached to pigeons, and there were pigeon mascots. Okay, and so and he gave the exposition to the girl of like, I've been combining animals with sports equipment, and it's like, why would you want to do that? I don't know, but he's like, here's the device that allows me to do it. So he shows the scary meat grinder device, and he's like, so what's his master plan? He's gonna combine the kids' foosball players with his shoes, with his soccer cleats. And it's like, okay, what of those two things is the animal? Because they're both sports equipment. You just established that this guy is combining animals with sports equipment, and then the crux of his plot is to combine two things, neither of which are animals.
And
he doesn't know that the foosball player's alive. He has no reason to believe that they're alive. Okay? And also, what do you gain from combining the foosball players with shoes? I mean, it's ridiculous to begin with, but I guess birds that are combined with cheerleaders has some value. There's no motive ever given, by the way. He never says like why he's doing this. I assume you're supposed to accept the reasoning as just I'm rich, I can do whatever I want. Haha. But specifically, like, I get him wanting to just take the foosball players from the kid to make him sad, but he could just destroy them. So I don't know what the end goal is because, again, he doesn't know these foosball players alive, but I assume the writers just forgot that he doesn't know that they're alive. So here's the way, and so then he puts them, like I said, on this device that's going to combine them with the shoes. And the device, this super high-tech thing that he was able to get his hands on, this illegal technology, to combine animals and sports equipment, is just like a paper shredder. It's a conveyor belt, like a Toy Story 3 conveyor belt. We've gone back to Toy Story now. We really have. That leads into just a grinder, a shredder. Is that what he's been doing all this time? He's been putting pigeons in grinders, followed by some ribbons and shit, and they come out the other end combined. The implications of this movie are all over the place. Like, they could have easily just done the classic zap ray where it zaps two things and then zaps and they're combined or something. It would have been a shitty, like, Fairly Odd Parents episode. I mean, holy fuck. So it really was the Toy Story 3 thing where it's all the foosball players on this conveyor belt and it's like, oh, they're all going to get thrown into the... And it's like... what is happening? They're running and they're gonna escape, and so I guess the guy comes down and he saves his foosball players.
No, it was the what? Rico comes in on one of the bird cheerleaders and grabs them.
So one of the foosball players comes and saves all the other foosball players, and in doing so drops something. Something falls into the machine. A nail. So this thing, by the way, has been grinding up animals and full-size foosball players. One nail falls into it. These foosball players are made out of lead, by the way. They say that.
They do.
But just a simple nail falls into, or a screw falls into the combiner thing. And apparently you can't combine shoes and screws. Like, that doesn't work. So it destroys the entire device malfunctions. They all run out of his secret underground lair, and the entire thing explodes. Like, shitty, classic, Hollywood, no reason explosion. The entire lab blows up from one machine getting slightly jammed. And it's like, alright, that's it. It's over. Ending of Zootopia. They won. They did it. They defeated the Ace's evil scheme was foiled, and I don't even know why that was introduced last minute, but it's foiled. The guy got the girl back. It's all good. But wait, we're halfway through the movie. No, okay, like, we're barely more than halfway through the movie. We're about maybe nearing 3/4 of the movie, and now we're presented with the actual conflict of the movie, okay? And guess what? The biggest twist of the movie is when they go back to being what you would have expected the conflict to be from the very beginning. Because you go into it thinking, all right, the Ace is going to want a rematch at foosball because he lost last time, right? And you're wrong. He comes in and it's like, no, his scheme is to buy the city and build a soccer stadium on it. Okay, sure. Oh, wait, no, now his scheme is to kidnap the girl. That actually makes sense. Oh, his scheme was actually to to steal his foosball players. All right, that also makes some sense. No, wait. He was stealing the foosball players so he could combine them with his shoes. Completely throws you for a loop. And then they foil him in all those ways, and it's like, you won. No, because the soccer stadium's still going to get built. Okay, that was clever. They were paying attention to that at least. So it's like, how are you going to stop the stadium from getting built? So the guy goes to Ace and he's like, I challenge you to a rematch. I beat you in foosball once. I can beat you again. And if I win, you're going to get out of here. You're not going to build the stadium. It's like, great. Okay, this is what I expected the movie to be about. But Ace goes, no, you can beat me at foosball. I know that. You've done that before. Never again. So clearly Ace hasn't been like training for this encounter or anything, which you would think. But instead he goes, no, we're not going to do what you're good at. Instead, let's do the thing that I'm like the best in the world at. I'm going to challenge you to a game of real soccer. And they set a match. They said it's like a week from now or something. We're going to have a soccer match in the stadium that I've already finished building in your city. And like if I win, I leave or something. And if you lose, you leave the town or something like that. And they agree to that. Now, this guy Ace has made a career out of playing soccer, so that makes a perfectly logical sense for him to challenge that. This main character has never played soccer. He's never even referenced himself playing soccer. He's never even, talked about like, oh, I was such a terrible soccer player, so I had to play foosball. Not even that. He just has never once acknowledged soccer except to say Ace was really good at playing soccer. And now the climax of the movie is going to be a soccer game, a soccer match between the guy and Ace. This came entirely out of left field. There was like 6 plots leading up to this, and this was the main thing. It got introduced in the last quarter of the movie. Guess what? The entire third act of the movie is now him going around recruiting all these towns members that we have only briefly seen. We haven't been introduced to any characters in the movie other than Ace, main character, girl, and the manager and the foosball players. Those are the characters we've been spending the entire movie with. It's revolved entirely around them. And you're thinking that's what it's about. It's about the boy and his foosball players, the girl and Ace. And so far, as weird as the subplots have been, side plots and twists and turns have been, it's been about those characters. Now, main character's going around collecting a team of human soccer players because he can't play soccer with a bunch of foosball players, right? And so you're thinking, what did the writers come up with first? Surely they first thought of a movie about foosball, and then from there, why did they think that they needed to go from foosball to soccer? Because then you lose the foosball players. If they started with soccer, why did they feel the need to make such a big deal of the foosball players? So now you end up with his ragtag team of soccer players. Like, it's very typical. It's like if you watch Longest Yard or Kicking and Screaming, or I guess Mighty Ducks. I never watched that, but it's one of those things where it's the classic, I'm going to whip this ragtag team of randos who don't know each other and don't like each other, put them all on a team together and make them good at the sport so we can win. It's like that. There's a million movies like that. Tons of sports movies follow that formula. Would work fine. That's not what this is. This is the third act of the movie. It's a whole movie unto itself. You have not spent a single second of time with any of these guys except the main character, and now he's like, oh, we're going to get them together and they're going to play soccer. But guess what? He doesn't even have time to train them. He spends all the time up until the tournament, because they gave them no time at all to prepare. All that time is spent just getting the team together, and then it's time for the match. It's time for the match against people who, it's no longer just a kid who's good at soccer. It's a professional soccer player and his professional soccer team playing against this guy from a town and like some random kids he grew up with, this old guy, the priest, like some grandpas, a cop who he just pulled together. And it's like, there is in no world would he be, for a conflict to work in a story, that's why, guess what? That's why the movie's called Underdogs. Okay, the plural is for, I guess, this team that showed up out of nowhere, not for the whole foosball team that was a focal point, that had their own plot lines, had their own character arcs that got resolved. They're the underdogs. Makes sense. That's, common trope. But they should at least have some semblance of a possibility of winning. Like, I felt no tension here because I never once had the thought cross my mind of, like, maybe they'll pull a win out. No, I never thought that there's not a chance. Not remotely. And so, they're in this soccer game, and this is the whole last quarter of the movie. This is the only part of the movie that actually slows things down and takes its time. And it's this random bullshit that they pulled out of their asses last second. And the entire time, the foosball players are just sitting on the sidelines, and they've just been reduced to fucking commentators, all right? They're like, I guess, the comic relief while you're watching this kid and his team get their asses kicked. It's like, what is not expected about this? This is what's going to happen. The unexpected part is that this game is happening at all. So finally, the foosball players decide, like, we gotta help them or something. And it's like, I guess, okay, at least they're bringing the players back into this. And so that's unsurprising that they go and try and help by, screwing up, tripping up the players, the Aces team. It's like, first of all, okay, let's just have the suspension of disbelief to believe that tiny light lead figurines could trip a fully grown man. We're gonna suspend our disbelief there. But so yeah, he's doing that, and people are like, oh wow, what's the deal? How are they missing their shots and stuff? It's like magic. And the other guys score 2 goals. The kids team scores 2 goals with the help from the little guys, and so he notices them at one point. He's like, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" He's like, "Oh, we've been helping you out, helping you win the game." He's like, "Yeah, you can't do that. That's cheating." He's like, "Oh, but they're playing dirty. We can play dirty too." And he goes, "Nah, if I'm gonna win this, I gotta win it right." It's like, "You're not gonna win, dude." So now they scored 2 goals to the other guy's 3, right? And the main character. So he tells his foosball players to go. So now they're back to being not in the movie at all. They play for a little bit longer. And there's this thing of, like, I guess because they scored 2 goals, now his team believes in themselves a little bit. And again, this isn't like a classic underdog story where it's, oh, this team that has a lot of potential but just doesn't try hard, and versus this team that has like the super hardcore, Scorpio dungeon training. What was it called? Scorpio, is that? Kai's Dojo, Cobra Kai. That's it. Damn it, I took way too long to say that. It's not like fucking Cobra Kai versus the Karate Kid. Where it's like one guy, he's had the hard ass teacher training him, and then the other guy's like, oh, I'm gonna learn this weird unconventional way. No, this is just a bunch of people who have never played soccer versus a professional soccer team. There's no world in which they're gonna get enough inspiration from scoring 2 goals to then, on their own merits, win. And they don't, to be fair to the movie, but like they start playing better, and there's this whole scene. Like, I don't feel that at all. There's no reason for them to be playing any better, just because they cheated for a little bit without knowing that they were cheating.
They didn't. They actually didn't play any better. They lost.
And in the end, they still lost. This kid gets like his leg broken, demolished, and then he limps all the way to the goal to try and stop this guy from scoring. By the way, Ace scores from within the goalie, from like past the goalie line several times, and I don't think that's legal, even though I never was into soccer.
It's 2-3, which I don't think is how that's supposed to work, but it's best of 3. What? First to 3.
What? Oh yeah, they're playing 2-3 goals. The other Ace's team scored twice, and then with cheating they scored twice. And the game ends when Ace scores the 3rd goal. Like it's not on a time limit. It's not time limit whoever has the high score. It's to 3. Like, this isn't fucking Smash Bros. You can't just change it from timed to stock. That's not an option, even though that's a far superior game mode. Weird. So the people who were making this movie evidently didn't understand foosball and didn't understand soccer, the 2 core elements that this movie focuses on. And so the kid loses the game. So as per the deal, he's got to like leave and let this guy build his soccer stadium, which is already built and full of people, and they're playing a game in it. But he built it in like a few days, a week tops, and he is lost. But then they're like, no, look, they're cheering for you, not for Ace. You're the real winner. You may have lost the game, but you won the town's heart. And it's like, wow, that doesn't matter because he made a deal. He agreed to it. It doesn't matter if the townspeople hate Ace now because he was going to build this stadium whether they liked him or not. And he already has built it. Nothing's going to change. So by the end of the movie, what you've got is the bully won. All right, the town stopped liking him, but they didn't like him at the start of the movie, so he didn't technically lose anything. He ended up back where he was, and he won the game against the kid. The kid didn't win the game. The town likes him now, but the town already liked him at the start, then stopped liking him, so he didn't gain anything either. His foosball table's still destroyed. He got his foosball players back, and they're alive, I guess, permanently. There's never a moment where they go back, like the night of the museum. And the foosball players had all their character arcs, so good for them, I guess, but they didn't get to be in the 3rd act of the movie. Ace's fiendish plot to combine animals and sportswear was foiled. I guess that's a good thing. Nothing ever came of it. Guess what? The boy and the girl were the ones getting arrested in that scene, by the way. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. They were getting arrested, put in a police car, put in a squad car for blowing up private property. He just gets out of the car, goes up to Ace, and is like, no, I'm not going to jail. I'm going to challenge you to a contest. And it's like, does Ace have the ability to be like, don't take these people to jail, officer? He's got to play a soccer match against me. What is going on at any point? It's insanity. I had so much fun watching it. It was absolutely hysterical. But it made no goddamn sense. And we researched it afterwards, and it was like, it was Spanish, and not only that, it was based on a book. A book! And we were like, well, I guess the book must be better. I really hope. But I could never have imagined this story. This does not seem like a book being adapted to movie story. Like this, the base level of it was so typical B-list, family-friendly animated movie that's like anyone could have come up with this. You didn't need to copy a book. And yet, I cannot imagine a book being written that would somehow make any of this make sense unless it's an enormous like novel series. Each part of this movie was its own book. There's a whole book devoted to finding there's an entire novel dedicated to the single day it takes to find all the foosball players. Then another entire book that's about Ace's secret plot with the combining animals and sportswear, which also takes place over the course of a couple hours. And then there's the last book is like the battle of 5 armies. It's just the soccer game. It's crazy. I have no idea. None of it comes together. It doesn't make any sense. But it was so funny to watch. 10 out of 10 experience. Don't regret in the slightest. Ain't that a bitch?
Elon Musk did the car. And Reddit is racist.